understanding the game. Why hadn't banks been regulated by the government when it came to credit card finance practices, knowing Americans had incurred over $956 billion in credit card debt?
Green is where it's at. Green will never let you down. You can bet your life on that. Win the bet and buy a crown. Cause when pushing comes to shove, money conquers faith and love. You can buy 'em up for nothing down. Money makes the world go round and round, round and round. Money makes the world go round and round, round and round.
For the last 30 years? The answer is simple: lobbying power. For 30 years, Americans and the banks have been playing credit card games. But all this time, the banks have had the casino's advantage. And everybody knows you can't beat the house. Banks have had the ability to change the terms, raise interest rates as they pleased. Currently, consumers use credit cards for 100,000 transactions a minute. Credit cards have produced billions in profits for the banks and nearly $1 trillion in debt for the consumers. The bottom line is America cannot pay back all this debt. Credit card debt is so high, it was one of the causes of the economic meltdown of 2008. Consumers borrowed on their homes to pay off credit card debt. Then they run up their credit cards again. It was not until recently that the government stepped in.
Sell your soul at cost. Buy the bar another round. Make yourself the boss. Pay your workers shit and tax the ground. Cause when money is your friend, then the party never ends. Hire a crew and you can paint the town. Money makes the world go.
The government is trying to regulate the credit card industry. Why? Banks operated normally for about 20 years. But then banks started giving credit to young people with no credit history and no job. They give credit to people with bad credit history already in the record. They give credit to low-income people. They even gave credit to people who had filed bankruptcy. Everything was great for about 10 years while banks were doing this. And people would apply for as many credit cards as they could. Ultimately, the credit card gave people the ability to enjoy a better lifestyle. Banks loved their customers' spending behavior. They knew the people they had given credit cards to carried high balances on their credit cards every month. Banks made their profit charging big interest rates on those balances. Credit card companies use marketing schemes to entice people, making it look like credit cards were a giveaway. For example, no annual fees were usually charged to customers. But these were actually helping the banks make money as they were able to afford to advertise no annual fees but charge it in big penalty fees. Banks would also increase the amount of late fees according to the amount of income they needed that month. And when the banks were forced to disclose the terms of the contract, they use a typical fine print disguise technique. Finding it hard to believe, these practices have been a legitimate tool to make money in the industry. Needless to say, banks have been able to charge all kinds of fees and interest rates, plus make all types of changes to the contracts. Some regulations were set in place a few years ago. It made credit card companies struggle a little bit, but they continue to have the casino's advantage. They came up with retroactive interest charges and other type of hidden fees, and the card game does not stop. Debit cards were not included in the new legislation. There are now more transactions with debit cards than with credit cards. The fees banks can charge on debit cards under certain circumstances can be even more expensive than credit cards. For example, banks allow overdrafts on purpose in order to charge a fee to the customer. They often use free checking account promotions as a tactic to get people to join the bank and issue a debit card to them. If you thought the game ended, you might be surprised. Due to the bad economy and unemployment rates on the rise, with 8.5 unemployed people in 2009, the highest ever, pawn shops and payday loan institutions have joined the game. Just like the banks, they have very little regulation. So be aware. Businesses will continue to find ways to make money. As customers, be aware of the rules of the game. Understand the game. Keep in mind how banks make their money. Remember, then, as long as financial institutions such as credit card institutions, banks who issue debit cards, and payday loan stores have the casino advantage, the consumer has the bad hand.